Robbie and Rex Road to DDC.
Stilling and Company.
Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
102.5 and 106.3.
Terang, it's a high fly ball.
The leading receiver
Awesome
in
Game 7.
Checker flag in the air.
The Game.
a Cromwell Media Station.
From behind the board to behind the mic. This is Campbell and Knezovic with Elijah Campbell and Michelle Knezovic on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game and on the Game Nashville app.
Happy Saturday, everybody. Welcome to Campbell and Knezovic. I'm Michelle Knezovic with Elijah Campbell from South Carolina. He's tuning in from today. Elijah, happy Saturday. How we doing?
I'm fantastic. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing great. We got Nick Kaiser on the board. Nick, how we doing? Nick pulled the mute. Nick pulled the Rex Road.
I did. I'm sorry. And by the way,
no.
It is Keiser, Michelle.
Keiser. Oh, my goodness. I'm so sorry.
Oh, wow. An error in the first minute of the show. We were off to a fantastic start.
It's okay.
Listen, we're off to a fantastic start. Listen, everybody pronounces my last name wrong, so we can relate on that.
We can't all have last names that are just Campbell, so.
Yeah, Elijah is very privileged in that aspect. Well, happy Saturday morning, everybody. I hope you have your coffee, and I hope you're ready to talk some NFL, to talk a little hoops, which we're going to start with. Elijah, the Miami Heat survive in advance last night just by the skin of their teeth.
Yeah. I mean, well, they look dead like the last two games, right? Like in the one in Miami in game 5, he scored 80 points the entire game, and Jimmy Butler looked like that knee injury was a lot more severe that was kind of led on. That team, like that's a team that had 23. This is one of my favorite stats from this series so far. So in game 5, the Miami Heat had 23 3-point attempts in which a defender was 4 to 6 feet away. The Miami Heat made 0 in that game. 0 for 23. That's not very good. They shot 15% in that entire game. A team that was the best three-point shooting team in the NBA all season long couldn't hit the broadside of a barn for 2 whole games. And then last night, Jimmy Butler just drops 47 and has the game that saves their entire season. And now the momentum's completely shifted. Like, I think there's been 3 or 4 different times in this series where it's like, okay, Boston's in firm control. They're the much better team. Or like after game 1, it's like, oh man, Boston gave them a really good punch and Miami came back and goes on this incredible run. And game 3, you're like, oh, well, if Bam Adebayo is scoring 29 points, no one's beating this Miami Heat team. So like there's been so many just like twists and turns of this series that it makes predicting game 7 almost a fool's errand.
Elijah, I am so excited. I think this has been my favorite series, but it's weird because you think about it, and the series are competitive, but then the games themselves, I feel like haven't been. And to be honest, you know that Jimmy Butler heard Draymond Green after the Warriors clinched the West, and they were talking, Draymond and Steph were on with Ernie, Kenny, Shaq, and Charles, and Draymond said, oh, you're asking me who I want to play? How about I know we're going to play Boston? You know, Jimmy Butler and the Heat heard that, and that got them a little fired up, you know. And, hey, for the Warriors, now they're sitting back. This series is going to 7 games, and they get a little rest under their legs.
Might have been some like 4D chess there from Draymond Green, too. Like, if I give them some extra motivation, if I maybe give them some bulletin board material, maybe they push this thing to 7 so these teams can just beat the hell out of each other. So that way when they play in game 1 on June 2nd, they're going to have tired legs because Jimmy Butler would be coming off like 2 games in which he has to score 40+ just to keep their season alive. So maybe there was some strategy to that. Who knows?
Maybe there was. If we do a quick prediction right here, I know we usually do give and go. Who do you think is coming out of the East?
Man.
Who do you think's winning this game 7 and playing the Warriors?
I still like Boston. Like, I know it's weird because if the Celtics win this game, that means they would have stolen 3 games in Miami to win this series. And that almost seems, if you had told me at the beginning of the series that Boston has to win 3 road games to win this series, I don't think that's possible. I would have said the Heat would have won in 5. Like, if the Heat are playing that well in Boston, it'd be really hard for me to be able to foresee them winning those games on the road. They would have won a game 5 and a game 7 on the road. which would be bonkers. But like the Celtics are so big, and I think the Heat rely a lot on Jimmy Butler shooting 15 to 18 foot jumpers, and that's
making
not a very
her having 47 points in order to win the game.
Yeah, two of the 3 games the Heat have won in the series, Jimmy Butler's had to score north of 40 points. Now, is it sustainable? Is it doable? Like, sure. Like, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Jimmy Butler scores 45 in Game 7 and the Heat win by like 6 or 7 points. But they almost have to rely on that, right? Because you're not getting a ton of offensive production out of anybody else. Like Bam Adebayo outside of Game 3 has been a no-show for a lot of this series. You know, Kyle Lowry finally showed up last night, 18 and 10 assists. They signed him to that massive deal for 10 assists, right? They didn't sign him to score like 35 points. They signed him for his championship experience and to be able to facilitate the ball. He finally did that for the first time in the series a little bit last night. Max Strus finally hit a couple shots, but I still just like Boston because I feel like it takes fewer things to go completely right for them to win. Jason Tatum doesn't have to go nuts. They're so good defensively. They have a better group of defenders, and I think they're an all-around better defensive team. So if there's any team that's equipped to win on the road in this environment, I feel like it is this Boston Celtics team. But, man, it's predicting anything in this series has been incredibly tough so far. But I think I'm still leaning Boston, personally.
Elijah, I'm pretty much on the same page as you. I traditionally have been a Miami Heat fan just because I love D Wade. But I think if we're looking at it, I mean, Miami could very well win, right? But I think if we're looking at from a team standpoint, Boston has just really peaked at the right time. We saw Miami during the regular season was peaking. I just feel like it was the wrong time for them. And then switching over to the Stanley Cup playoffs, we've got the Canes and the Rangers today at 7 p.m. Game 6 tonight.
6, yeah.
6. Hurricane 3, Rangers 2. So if the Rangers win, they keep it alive, and then they move into Game 7. What do you like about that series so far?
What I like about it is the Hurricanes are still the same team they were in the last series. Like in a lot of like in the NHL and in NBA playoffs, you do see a lot of teams kind of adjusting a little bit as the playoffs kind of go along. Like the Boston Celtics or the Miami Heat, perhaps, you know, like they've been able to win at home and on the road. Some of the struggles they had in their first series, they didn't have in the second series against Philadelphia, or they just got better as some of these series go along. And the Carolina Hurricanes cannot win on the road. I just straight up can't do it.
Nope.
They are undefeated at home in the playoffs, and they are winless on the road in the playoffs. They are strange in that regard. And hockey's one of those sports too, like where you do see a lot of variance in like these playoff runs, just because every team usually is pretty good on the road, right? You have to be able to win games on the road to make a run in the Stanley Cup playoffs, because every other team is capable of stealing one from you. Like the Preds, like the most competitive game they played in was the Game 2 on the road in Denver. You know, like home ice advantage doesn't mean as much in this market in Nashville. Like we've learned that the hard way, having a team that won the President's Trophy and then lost a Game 7 at home by getting the brakes beaten off of them by the Winnipeg Jets. Like it's not the do-all, end-all, but unless you're the Carolina Hurricanes, apparently, where you can just win all your home games and then not be as competitive on the road. And honestly, like tonight's a big one for Shesterkin, not only because they have to keep their season alive, but I think if he has a big game and you get like a 95% save percentage out of him, then they could steal that. I mean, I think they really could. But the Hurricanes have to prove they can win on the road. And if they can't prove they can win on the road, they can still win the series. I think they should close out the Rangers tonight. And if I'm a Hurricanes fan, I'd be very disappointed they couldn't close this thing out in New York. But because when you play Tampa Bay, you got to win some games on the road.
When you play
because
Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay, yes. The Tampa Bay Lightning, who have won their last, 10 or 11 straight series in the playoffs. That's a pretty remarkable feat. Like you're approaching 70s Islanders or 70s, 80s Islanders type stuff, where I think they won 19 in a row. But the Hurricanes have to prove to me they can win on the road if I'm to even feel remotely confident that they can give Tampa Bay a run for their money.
I think Tampa. I think Tampa Bay. Tampa is going to three-peat. Honestly, this team just looks
feels like it.
Right? I feel like it's destined. You know, I mean, Tom Brady moves to Tampa. I mean, you're going to become a championship city. So you might as well enjoy it, Tampa. Fun fact, though, I saw this on Twitter, Elijah, about the Hurricanes-Rangers series, and it was ticket prices, right? And it said one of the best seats in the house in Carolina, the cost of that was like $470 or something around there. That would barely get you in the door for the Madison Square Garden one for the Rangers. I was like, wow, what a gap in that. I mean, it's Madison Square Garden, gap. So I get it, but you might as well go. Yeah. You might as well go buy a flight to Carolina and then get a seat up against the glass.
If you're a Rangers fan, yeah, why wouldn't you? You know, especially considering, you know, that Hurricanes team just can't lose at home. So why not get as much of your contingency down there into Raleigh as you can? I did not know the ticket prices, that there was that big of a discrepancy. That's pretty astonishing, you know? And of course, like, stuff's more expensive in New York anyway than it would be in North Carolina. So like that part makes sense, but the MSG factor. But if you're a Rangers fan, it's almost more cost efficient if you, like you said, just go to Raleigh and get yourself seats by the glass and bring your own home ice advantage.
Yeah, there you go. And a weekend down there, it'd probably weather-wise be a little bit nicer, a little bit more sunshine. But Elijah, we have a lot to recap this week with the Tennessee Titans. Couple veterans on the field, couple rookies on the field, couple takeaways from videos that we have seen at practice. And one rookie, you know, has been in and out of practice a little bit. And if you want to weigh in on this conversation, make sure to text us at 615-737-1025, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We will give our thoughts on it on the other side of the break. You're listening to ESPN 102.5 and 106.3 The Game.
If you're on the road between downtown Nashville,
they're still in good shape to make the playoffs,
and I-840,
players make it clear they don't want to be somewhere anymore.
There's a new way to hear all your favorite shows and sports programming on 102.5 The Game.
I go back to that play and I shake my head. What I was worried about is that they were still just going to keep the goal.
It's 106.3 FM.
Think about all the good Titans teams.
This is very much so a run-first offense.
Now you have two choices to hear Nashville's best sports talk. Check out 106.3 now and add it as a favorite.
This week only, the Electronic Express Memorial Day sale is here. Celebrate with brands like Charbroil, Yeti, Samsung, LG, Dyson, and more. Electronic Express has huge savings in every department. Outdoor living, appliances, 4K TVs, smart home, furniture, and more. Plus, save up to 40% on all appliances with up to 36 months free financing. Shop in-store or online at electronicexpress.com with free express delivery. Summer savings at Electronic Express. We make it happen.
Spring is in the air, and that means all kinds of fun in the sun is just around the corner. But if you're feeling low energy, if you've put on weight and just aren't getting the gains from your workouts, if you aren't sleeping well and your libido isn't what it used to be, maybe you aren't looking forward so much to sunny days and shirtless weather. This is Kim for the Tennessee Men's Clinic, and if this sounds like you, we might very well have the answer, because you may very well be suffering from low testosterone. And that, my friend, is something that can be effectively treated to get you back to the guy you used to be. The Tennessee Men's Clinic has treated thousands of men for low T. Our treatment programs are highly effective, with most men seeing results in just a few weeks. Assuming you're like most guys, you'll sleep better, have better workouts, have higher energy, and your sex life might just improve as well. So give us a call. Just $99 gets you a PSA and T test and a medical consult. Call 615-208-9090. That's 615-208-9090. Or go to TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. Visit our website to learn more, including side effects. Treatments extra. Results vary.
If you missed the latest edition of Talking with TD.
Former Maryland, now Titans tight end, Chig Okonkwo, from college to the NFL, there's even more learning that you could acquire, would you say?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's so much more learning, and I've figured that out in the short time that I've been here, that even now, like, I remember coming from high school, going to college, I remember saying, oh, I really don't know anything about football. And now I'm saying the same thing, like, oh, I really don't know anything about football, really, because the NFL is just a completely different game. You know, it's all these different rules, these new rules, you know, different body types, a lot stronger guys, there's different techniques you got to use now, and just different schemes and all these different things. So there's definitely a huge learning curve that, you know, I'm excited for. I'm excited for the challenge to learn it all.
Search Talking with TD today on your favorite podcast platform. The newest edition drops every Wednesday at theGameNashville.com and the Game Nashville app.
I can go from 0 to 60 way too fast.
Who knew electric vehicle owners were having so much fun?
20 or 30 years ago, I owned a gas sports car, and this car is much quicker.
It's a great, fun car to drive. When you put your foot on the accelerator, it just goes.
They're fun, they're fast, they're efficient.
Visit driveelectrictn.org to learn how you can start having fun driving an electric vehicle.
Sponsored by the East Tennessee Clean Fuels Coalition, the Tennessee Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
Never miss a moment of the show.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah! Subscribe to the Campbell and Knezovic podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. You're listening to Campbell and Knezovic.
They're going to be huge.
On ESPN.
102.5 and 106.3 The Game, and on the Game Nashville app.
Welcome back in Campbell and Knezovic. I'm Michelle Knezovic, Elijah Campbell, virtual from South Carolina today, and I'm signing in from the Hillside Medical Games Studio. We got Nick on the board. If you guys want to join in on the conversation, make sure to text in at 615-737-1025, the Game phone and text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. You can also watch us streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook Live every day. Video streaming brought to you by the law offices of Amanda Gentry. Elijah, I teased this before we headed to break. Titans were on the field today. Their practices were open to the media for their OTAs. We saw some rookies out there, but honestly, the biggest storyline wasn't even about the players on the field. It was about the Titans' first-round draft pick, Treylon Burks, off the field again, and it was asked to Mike Vrabel in the press conference, what's kind of going on. And as we know, Mike Vrabel doesn't get into his players' injuries or essentially any of their personal whatever is going on.
Not his thing. Yeah, it's not his forte.
Not his thing. He's like, I will let the players speak on it, but Treylon Burks hasn't had a media opportunity after whatever's going on. We don't really know, and all of this is really just speculation at this point, which is kind of what we've been doing on our shows all week and throwing out scenarios of what could be going on or taking context clues of, what is going on with the Titans' first-round draft pick. And obviously, with Titans fans, they already have that little alert in the back of their head going off because of, the history of these first-round draft picks with this franchise. What were just your initial reactions when this kind of all came out of practice this week, Elijah?
It's kind of funny because the Titans fan base is almost like, as much as a fan base can be traumatized by first round draft picks, like this fan base is traumatized with their first round draft picks. But honestly, when I saw that a lot was being made of Treylon Burks' shape, I felt it was a little presumptuous, just because a lot of times I don't know how often it really is that some players are a little behind, but I've talked to Chris Sanders about this. I've talked to D Mace about this. When you're preparing for a practice or you're preparing for the combine, like the scouting combine, right? You are doing these high intensity drills to run your 40 time faster. So you're practicing running in a straight line. You're practicing doing a 3-cone drill, none of which are things that you actually do on a football field. So it's I've equated it several times to, the ACT, when you're studying for the ACT, sometimes you study for the test harder than you do just try to memorize knowledge, memorize facts, or certain things. You're studying for the test. And in football, it's a lot of times the same way. A wide receiver is going to oftentimes just train for those specific drills that they're going to do in the scouting combine, because that's how they're judged. They want to get their draft stock up. So getting into football shape can be a little difficult for a lot of those rookies. And it doesn't really honestly didn't worry me that much because I was there at OTAs the second day and Treylon Burks seemed fine, maybe underwhelming physically. I wasn't leaving that practice going, man, this guy's a freak of nature. He dropped a pass at the end of practice that I thought he should have corralled. But I think D Mace made a really good point last week that if it's July and we're in training camp and he can't do more than 30 minutes outside doing a football practice, then you should be really concerned. Then the Isaiah Wilson vibes should actually start to be a little reverberated, just because that was the big knock on him. I've talked to people from the Titans organization too that said, I asked, I was like, so like, what was so evident about Isaiah Wilson not working? And like from the get-go, even in minicamp, you could tell he was out of shape and completely unprepared. And I don't want to say Treylon Burks is out of shape because trust me, I'm an expert on being out of shape. That guy is not completely out of shape. You know,
I would say he's in some pretty good shape.
Exactly. Yes. I'm not going to sit here and be a gas bag and accuse him of just being like fat and out of shape. Like I didn't leave practice a couple Saturdays ago thinking that, but that was like the big knock on Isaiah Wilson was he started rookie camp out of shape and uninterested. And he came to training camp out of shape and uninterested after months of preparation for it, or what you're supposed to be doing is preparing for that. So I think that's when the alarm should ring. But really, as of now, the Treylon Burks thing with him having a tough time making it through that first practice doesn't really alarm me.
Elijah, I was pretty much on the same page as you when it came to this situation. I mean, he opted out of the bowl game with Arkansas. So his last game he played for them was November 26th. That was about almost exactly 6 months ago.
Hadn't played football in half a year.
So, I mean, when you think about that and you pointed out, you know, training for the combine and trying to get these numbers to make NFL franchises look at you is different than like you're training for one specific niche thing, right?
Right.
That, yes, is going to help you in football, but it's not a practice with, you know, hitting and different drills and, you know, just getting your cardiovascular back up. Right? Point blank. I mean, so I didn't think much of it. A lot of people were speculating, is it allergies? I mean, if you're not struggling with allergies right now in Nashville or Kentucky or anything, I don't know who you are because my eyes have been itching for days and I've been sneezing. It's just kind of what comes with the territory when you're living around here. And I agree with you on that front that if this is happening in training camp in July, August, the season is about to come up, yes, that's something to be worried about because then you're literally supposed to play a game in a couple weeks. And
they have preseason that month or like later that next month, you know? Like that's when you have to be in some shape.
And when Treylon Burks is coming onto this roster as a first-round draft pick that is needed to be on the field week 1 because of the A.J. Brown trade and Robert Woods coming off an ACL, where we did see some videos on the Titans Twitter account and Instagram of him, you know, running. And then Joe Rexrode is on our morning show. Robbie and Rexrode, he was at practice. He said that, you know, Robert Woods looked pretty good. And we heard in Tannehill's press conference that, yeah, I like throwing to Robert Woods. Like, he's happy with that new weapon that he's got out there. You know, between Robert Woods, Treylon Burks, and Austin Hooper, Tannehill's going to have 3 guys that he's never played an NFL game with before. Does it worry you a bit that is what is happening, essentially heading into, you know, week 1 and heading into this season just because of how last season ended and A.J. Brown was kind of that solid guy for him?
Now, that is the one thing I'd be concerned about. Not Treylon Burks' shape or if his allergies are keeping him from completing the first practice of rookie minicamp. It's that he's going to be relied upon to be a 600-plus yard receiver. I feel like that's a fair bar, right? Because like when you lose A.J. Brown, that's a lot of stuff you have to make up. It's a lot of production. That's 23% of the target share you're going to have to make up. And that's at the floor, 869 yards to make up for. And if your number one proven target is a guy who's never played on this team, is coming off a torn ACL, north of 30, it's a little concerning. You know, like the 2 main targets that are expected to be the 2 main targets on this team have never caught a pass from Ryan Tannehill. And I think that's pretty concerning, especially considering like if they don't have a ton of reps, it can be nasty, right? Like Julio Jones last year, him and Ryan Tannehill never got on that same page that was supposed to take the Titans offense from elite to the best, you know, like the clear 1A offense in football, like a lot of people kind of hypothesized going into last year. And a lot of that didn't come to fruition just because Julio Jones had the hamstring thing, wasn't able to really do a ton with Ryan Tannehill until training camp. And then it showed. And then, of course, he couldn't stay healthy. And that's a whole other thing in itself. But I think those reps are valuable. To me, that's more of a concern, honestly, that his top 2 targets coming into this year are guys he's never thrown the ball to in live action football. That's a little concerning. When your number one returning receiver that you have target-wise is Nick Westbrook-Akina, it's a little concerning. And the Titans wide receiver depth is already a little concerning. That part is what, to me, I think can make this Titans offense regress to a point where you might be staring down the barrel of an 8 or 9 win season.
And Elijah, you pointed out, Nick Westbrook-Akina, everybody made fun of Joe because during training camp he wrote that he's going to be a solid guy for the offense or, something along those lines. Or maybe that he was just going to make the team at that point. I don't exactly know, the article. But Joe had written something that essentially was, Tennessee likes him, right? And then,
oh yeah, they love him.
As the season went on, we know that Mike Vrabel in his press conferences doesn't call out specific players unless specifically asked about them. But Nick Westbrook-Akina was a guy who said, he can play all positions. And he was a versatile guy, and he was point blank just on the field and available every week for this team. And he's going to be the one that Ryan Tannehill has the most chemistry with. And during the OTAs, at some points he was wide receiver 1 because Robert Woods is still rehabbing from that ACL injury, and Treylon Burks was on and off the field. So I pose another question to you with, Tennessee hasn't gotten the money back from Julio Jones yet. Do you think that this wide receiver free agency market is even big enough? I know Will Fuller's been thrown around out there, but obviously there's concerns with him on he's never been able to be healthy for a full season in the NFL. Do you think that you could see Tennessee maybe make another move potentially once they get that Julio Jones money back at the receiver position?
It's worth trying, I know Paul Carsey came on y'all's show early in the weekend's like, Joe, free agency's in March. Who are you going to get that's going to make the wide receiving core that much better? But then I pose you this, if your number one option is what we just laid out, your number 2 option is a rookie who, honestly, having a 1,000-yard season expectation from Treylon Burks is unfair. Having a 900-yard season from Treylon Burks is almost unfair. He is the most polarized, according to Adam Kaplan, from the teams he talked to, the most polarizing wide receiver prospect in this draft. There's a lot of promise there. There's also a lot of concern there. It could be a bust, that it's not a sure thing. You don't have that sure thing. A veteran to come in here and help you out with a sure thing, whether it's a guy who can just give you an additional 550, 600 yards. You're not asking for someone who's going to be your number 1 receiver. Like Emmanuel Sanders, if he isn't contemplating retirement, I know as a free agent, but I think there's serious concern that he might be retiring. Cole Beasley is out there. You can get relatively good production from Cole Beasley. And even T.Y. Hilton, but you're only going to have a few million to work with. There's other guys out there that I honestly think could help the team. Because honestly, what are you asking for with an additional receiver? You're asking for what?
20 snaps a game?
Yeah, give me 4 or 5 extra catches. Don't make Nick Westbrook-Akina have to be a guy who's catching 7-8 balls a game for 75, 80 yards. If there's another option out there that can at least alleviate some of that pressure that your offense already faces, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think you should at least try with whatever money you have left, address that, because that's the one thing that's going to keep this team from being anything that resembles a contender in this conference.
At the beginning of last year, heading into the season, we were worried about the defense. And we thought this offense was going to be explosive. And at some points, yes, it was last year. And now tables have turned. And this season, we're worried about the receiver room. We're worried about the offensive line. And point blank, people are worried about the quarterback. And I love some good trolling, Elijah. And one of the Tennessee Titans players on Twitter is having a little trolling fest right now, just with all the media and everything. So that'll be we'll discuss that on the other side, Elijah, and I'm going to make you guess which player it is. You're listening to Campbell and Knezovic on 102.5 The Game, 106.3, and on the Game Nashville app.
You love the game.
Duchesne scores! Titans touchdown!
We live the game.
Because if he did come back, how long would he play?
Really good after the catch. He can get open.
We are
Terang, it's a high fly ball.
The leading receiver.
Awesome game 7.
Checker flag in the air.
The Game. Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
With all the new people moving here recently, we thought it'd be a good idea to explain Genesis Diamonds. If you've lived here a while, you know all this, so bear with us. Genesis Diamonds is not an ordinary jewelry store. It was started decades ago by a major diamond wholesaler based in Tel Aviv. He was the diamond supplier for hundreds of upscale jewelry stores. Then he decided to start selling direct to the public at prices that undercut traditional jewelers in a big way. This no middleman approach caught on fast and disrupted the traditional jewelry business model forever. Today, Genesis Diamonds continues that extraordinary value promise. With the highest quality diamonds, the lowest prices, the strongest guarantees, exceptional service, and a mind-blowing selection of fine diamonds and exclusive designer jewelry. So if you've just moved here from New York or California or wherever, we invite you to discover the secret the locals are well aware of. Genesis Diamonds. Just another great reason you made the move to this extraordinary place we're proud to call home.
When Smashville wants to rock. We are Nashville's rock station. 102.9 The Buzz. If you missed the latest from Stillman and Company, delivered by TriStar Moving.
I don't think Titan fans have any expectation for Malik Willis to play it down. In fact, I would say, as a Titan fan myself, I am rooting personally for Malik Willis to not play this year. And I am an anti-Tanite. I do not believe this guy can get the Titans to the Super Bowl. And yet I still don't want Malik Willis to play this year. Because I don't know if, again, Vrabel told you.
Because the draft gurus said he wouldn't be ready to play this year?
Probably something to that. Also, Vrabel told you.
Which also is fine. They took him in the third round. He doesn't need to be ready to play this year.
Well, Vrabel's update was basically that, he's
progressing nicely.
Baby steps.
We've got some things to work on, but we like what we see.
You would not hear that about Kenny Pickett.
No.
Tune in Stillman and Company with Jared Stillman. Weekday afternoons from 2 to 6.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Blood Assurance, this community's local blood centers, is hiring for several open positions in the Nashville area. Be a part of a company that helps save lives by providing the local hospitals with the much-needed life source of blood. They offer competitive pay, great benefits, paid time off, and retirement benefits. Blood Assurance has a family-friendly environment. Go to bloodassurance.org/careers. Again, that's bloodassurance.org/careers to apply.
Hey, Preds fans.
Running across to make the save is Sarah.
You can now hear Smashville's best sports talk.
The backhander, he scores!
And every Predators game on 106.3 FM.
Oh, that was a thing of beauty.
From downtown Nashville to Rutherford and Williamson counties.
Duchesne with the overtime winner.
Catch all the action on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. You're listening to Campbell and Knezovic
on ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game and on the Game Nashville app.
Welcome back in Campbell and Knezovic, live from the Hillside Medical Game Studio. I'm Michelle Knezovic. We've got Elijah Campbell on Zoom today, signing in from South Carolina. Elijah, doing a little remote. We love it. Well,
the old Palmetto State.
I teased it before the break, and Elijah, I don't know if you saw this on Twitter. This was last night. And
last night, then I have not seen it.
Shout out to Paul Kaharski, because he was the one who quote tweeted it, and that's the reason I saw it on my timeline. So I am going to read you the tweet.
Okay.
And you are going to guess which player tweeted it. Are you ready for this?
Oh, this is good. All right. Yeah, give it to me.
And it will segue perfectly into our next segment. I play center, guard, and tackle. I sit on the center of the bench. I guard the water, and I tackle anyone who tries to steal it.
Oh, that's a classic football joke. That is a classic. That's an all-timer football joke.
Once I tell you who it is, you're going to be like, oh, that makes sense.
Current Titan, on the roster right now.
Maybe somebody who everybody has no idea what position he's going to play.
Oh, Dylan Radins.
Dylan Radins.
Right? Yes. Oh, Dylan Radins with a sense of humor. I like that. Okay, that's good. That's funny. Maybe not if you're a coach, maybe not what you want to see, like prodding at his lack of playing time, because there's probably valid reasons for that. But that is pretty funny, though. So shout out Dylan Radins, having a sense of humor about it. That's good.
Well, and the fact that he's been that player where before the draft, everybody was like, John Robinson, what position is he going to play? And they're like, he's going to play football. We just want the best 5 guys.
He's a football player.
Right? I mean, nobody knows which position he's going to play. Is he going to be the right tackle? Honestly, still a big question. And, I mean, segueing into just a big question mark on the offensive line as a whole. I mean, last year, at least you had Roger Saffold on your O-line, one of the best at his position in the league, and he heads up to Buffalo now. And Tannehill still was one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the league, I think just right behind Joe Burrow. Mm-hmm. And with Tannehill not coming off his best season and the O-line just kind of with a big question mark, to be honest, I would say that I'm more worried about the offensive line for this team than the wide receiver room.
It's a valid concern. And just because losing Saffold is big. So the offensive line last year to me had one really big pro and one really big con. That big pro being they were fantastic run blockers. Roger Saffold's one of the best run blockers in the league. I mean, I'll always revert back to the 2019 playoff run, that game against the Patriots, where he referred to himself in postgame as, a bouncer. He's bouncing dudes out of the club, and that's exactly what the entire Patriots defensive line. He was dismissing dudes like they were late for class. Like, he was awesome in that. And that's what he does. Like, Roger Saffold is a good mover of other men, to pave way for running backs. And that's the sole reason the Buffalo Bills signed him, right? That's a team that couldn't get any run game going. And I think them not being able to run the ball at all might be the thing that kept them from being the best team in football last year.
Yeah,
but
he's going to be Josh Allen's new best friend.
Yes, exactly. And and all those running backs back there, the Bills are going to find out real fast if they can actually play, because you can't blame it on a bad run blocking offensive line, because Roger Saffold still got it. But with this team last year, the biggest con was pass protection. You laid it out perfectly. Like, Ryan Tannehill got the hell beaten out of him in a lot of games last year. And a lot of it's because you didn't get, obviously you wasted the first round pick on Isaiah Wilson. Then the next year you have Dylan Radins, who I thought played well in the one game he actually really played in, the San Francisco game. But you need more than just one game of playing well, to make your offensive line better. That's a really big concern, because if Nate Davis reverts back to being just a guy, then this offensive line isn't going to be a great run blocking offensive line, which means the one big thing that made them really good in the past is going to be gone. And this offense that is predicated around the run is going to have a running back who's returning from a Jones fracture, who played his last playoff game with screws in his right foot.
But hey, you see that Instagram video?
I have not seen the Instagram video. Even though that man is a freak of nature. However, even the freakiest of freaks of nature cannot run if they don't have a great offensive line to at least give them some cushion and separation. If there's going to be a reverting in Derrick Henry's career or a serious regression, it's not just going to be his injury in his foot, right? It's going to be because the offensive line just wasn't as good. And when you lose Roger Saffold, you were at risk of that happening. And I can kind of see that happening this year. And then if that's going to be the case, you're going to have to be able to throw the ball. And Ryan Tannehill can't do that, quite frankly, if he's on his ass. So he's going to have to be able to stay upright. And you need something out of Dylan Radins. If you're not getting anything out of Dylan Radins this year, then guarding the water bottles and being the center of the bench and tackling anyone who comes near the water cooler might be all he does in a Titans uniform.
Which is very unfortunate, and that is not what Tennessee Titans fans want him to do. That is not what Mike Vrabel and John Robinson want him to do.
Not what he was drafted to do last year at all.
Yeah, definitely not. Well, Taylor Lewan, another big part of that O-line, coming off the ACL injury last year, and was really vocal at practice this week about, the difference between coming into last year's season versus this year. Here's what Taylor Lewan had to say during Titans OTAs last week.
Having an offseason of actually being able to work rather than rehab, what is that going to look like for you, week one versus a year ago?
being in shape is the number one thing. I wasn't in shape very much last year. There wasn't a lot of finishing downfield compared to how it's been in the past. That's kind of how I made my name in this league, is being a guy that finishes, and didn't have the capability of doing that last year. I wasn't in good enough shape to do that, and being out here now, it's already a world of a difference to me. I can put a helmet on. I'm not gasping for air after 4 or 5 plays. I can go through a whole period, and I'm laughing and talking trash with the boys. It's a good time. Football is now fun for me again. If there's any difference you guys want to know between last year and this year, I'm enjoying the hell out of myself now. Last year, let's not get it twisted. That was miserable. You know what I'm saying? You guys go ahead and bleep that out. You know what I'm saying? But seriously, that was miserable. It was, the first game was terrible. Till the middle of the season, at the end of the year, things started going well. But damn, it was just not fun. Every week was like, you don't feel your best. You're making 100 excuses in your head. And then you get done, you got to go unpack all those things. You can't just pretend like it didn't happen. Like, I had to go and talk to a lot of people and figure that stuff out and unpack that stuff. And once we did, it was, I feel a whole lot better. I feel more like myself than I ever have.
So, Elijah, that was Taylor Lewan at OTAs this week, and he just, his whole attitude just seemed completely different. He's always a player who's going to be vocal with you, who's going to be really open and honest about, what's going on and things like that. I think he's a great spokesperson. He can be a little colorful with his language sometimes. You heard the little bleeps in there. But
you have to FCC proof almost every clip that he's in. Yeah.
But it's okay. It makes for great radio, right, Elijah? So what was your take? What was your takeaway? Mine real quick was just that he seems like, mentally, physically is just in a better place heading into this season and seems ready. He was even like, I was having fun with the guys, some of the rookies, and just really enjoying camp and actually being able to not just dread. Like, we all know that when we're out of shape and you go back to the gym for the first time. And this is at a completely different level. It's like, oh, God, Stairmaster, you hit minute 2 and you're like, okay, I can't breathe.
You instantly regret going in the first place. But my instant reaction, I guess, with the Lewan thing, it's like, for him, like, it's a mental thing. Like, if you, like, he wasn't as good because he, like you just said, his head wasn't in it. And if you mentally are not in the headspace to want to be able to perform at a high level like that, then you're not going to be able to do it in this kind of league. You have to love what you do. Like, the guys that are coming into OTAs voluntarily in their free time to get better, do it because they love to do it. Chris Sanders would tell you too. Like, when he would go to OTAs, because he loved to play football. Dude loved playing football. He was there to play football. And if you're not having fun with it, you're not like thoroughly enjoying it, not only are you going to be miserable, you're not going to be very good. And he mentioned, if mentally he wasn't as juiced about football, that's when he didn't succeed, because he didn't have that drive, that desire. And I think, honestly, like, for him, I'm happy for him that he's been able to zone out a lot of negativity, a lot of stuff that goes his way. And a lot of it is because he does bring it himself, because he's such a colorful character. He is the type of player that is vocal to the point where, he brings on a lot of attention to himself, whether he intends to or not. That's just who Taylor Lewan is. But I'm glad for him, at least, he's been able to get in a place where he can filter a lot of that out and be able to compartmentalize the goofball from the art, a little bit, and be able to at least have one make the other a little better. It's all about balance.
Well, and he's going to be an instrumental part on this offensive line this year, especially with a lot of holes and a lot of just question marks on who is going to go where and how it is all going to fit together. We do have our first caller on the show, Adam in Portland. Hey, Adam, how are we doing today?
Hey, Miss Michelle, Elijah. So, listen, I think our defense is probably as deep as it's ever been. It's probably as good. I can't remember a defense that we've had in the last 20-something years that was so rounded. This is a very rounded defense. Kind of sometimes worry about the linebackers, whatever. They're just young, but I think everywhere else is pretty solid. Defense wins championship. We won 12 games in spite of our terrible offense. If we're ready to cash in the season over a 900-yard receiver or a 48-year-old guard, then it is what it is. We got younger and skill positions, man. I feel really good about the tight end position, which is like gross neglect. I've been using that word last year. It was awful. Anthony Ferguson, we're putting it all in there on Anthony Ferguson. Yuck. So we got Austin Hooper. He's good. I feel really good about this team heading into the next season.
Adam, thank you. Have a nice holiday weekend, and thanks for the call.
Yeah. I'm glad he's enthusiastic, but I'll tell you this, and just because it's a team I follow closely, the New Orleans Saints were the same way last year. No weapons on offense. You relied heavily on your running back. The quarterback question wasn't as bad as was a lot worse than what this is. But they had an elite defense, and the elite defense made them a 9-win team. The ceiling for that team was 9 wins. Just because they could stop everybody, they just couldn't score. They weren't they're not beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers if they didn't shut them out in that game. I think they won that game 3-0. I mean, there were 3 total points scored in that game, or 9-0. It's 9-0. They kicked 3 field goals. It was 9-0. The Saints aren't winning that game if they don't shut out the Buccaneers, and that was the case all year. The Saints weren't winning games in which they had to score 24 points or more because that defense was so elite that they didn't have to more than 9 times. And I understand the enthusiasm about this defense because defense is legit. It is a legitimate NFL defense, as good as it gets, but I don't share the same enthusiasm with the offense.
I don't share the same enthusiasm with it, but I think I am a little bit more optimistic than you are, Elijah, on this part. But, I mean, the defense, they're nasty, and they're about to have a huge year. But there was some reports in the national media of where they kind of see the Tennessee Titans, where they fall in all of these preseason predictions. On the other side, we are going to tell you where they place them, where we would place them, and if we think they're getting slept on a little bit as far as their defense. You're listening to Campbell and Knezovic on 102.5 The Game, 106.3, and the Game Nashville app.
Robbie Stanley.
They get a lead in that game and just totally close the door.
Joe Rexrode.
If he plays next year, it's disastrous.
Robbie and Rexrode. Mornings from 6 to 10 on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN.
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app.
If you're shopping for a new home, the last thing you want is another surprise jump in mortgage rates. Hey, Willie Donick here, excited to tell you about Loan Pronto's all-new rate protection program. You get a rate quote that is locked in for 180 days, 6 whole months. Brian and Amy did it. They locked in an APR in the 3s with Loan Pronto. When they finally found a home a month later, rates had jumped into the 4s, but they were protected thanks to Loan Pronto, and they saved over $200 a month on their payment. With Loan Pronto's rate protection guarantee, you can make offers with confidence. And there's no fee for this, no upfront cost. And most home buyers who go with Loan Pronto save about $3,000 in closing costs. Call now for the all-new rate protection program so you can check rate increases off the list of things to worry about. 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780. 499-5780. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781. Subject to lender approval.
If you missed the latest from Stillman and Company, delivered by TriStar Moving.
And if you're the Titans, you would give Derrick Henry an extension, not because you love Derrick Henry, because I think, the questions I have about Derrick Henry, I think they very much exist, and I think the Titans very much have those same questions about Derrick that I have about, is he going to ever be the old Derrick after the foot injury? He did not play well in that playoff game. He did not play well in last year's playoff game. Maybe all these people that said you can't win a Super Bowl being led by a running back, maybe they're all right. And maybe that's something the Titans are thinking about. But this is the only leverage Derrick has. And so he would want to put the pressure on the Titans to, how are you going to look to the other 52 people when AJ wanted to get a contract done and you said no and traded him, and Derrick wants to get a contract done and you're saying no to him? You would look cheap. And that is something that a team, they never want the players to think. They never want the players to think, even if I perform to the best of my abilities, it doesn't matter because they're never going to pay me. I'm sure there are people listening right now that have worked jobs in their lives where no matter how well they perform, they know they're never going to get an adequate pay raise. To kind of mail it in a little bit. And that's not something you want if you're the Titans. Some teams can get by with everybody thinking that they're a cheap organization, but most can't. And if you're going to do it, you better hope Tom Brady is willing to take less money, because then you could tell every player, hey, Tom is willing to take less money, so that's why you should be willing to do it. But if nobody else is, then nobody's going to sit there and say, well, wait a minute. You're not paying Derrick Henry. You're not paying AJ. So you guys are cheap. And it's not a fair accusation, but that's what the Titans have to worry about the other 52 people thinking if Derrick starts to hold out.
Tune in Stillman and Company with Jared Stillman. Weekday afternoons from 2 to 6.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app. The Sounds.
Play ball. Keston got hit by the pitch, and the Sounds take a 1-0 lead on a bases-loaded hit batsman.
The Nashville Sounds continue their series against Toledo.
Swing and a miss, strike 3. Sounds win.
Coverage begins at 5:50 on your home for Sounds baseball.
ESPN.
94.9 and the Game Nashville app. You're listening to Campbell and Knezovic.
They're going to be huge.
On ESPN.
102.5 and 106.3 The Game and on the Game Nashville app.
Welcome back in Campbell and Knezovic. I'm Michelle Knezovic from the Hillside Medical Game Studio with Nick on the board, pumping some tunes out. Elijah Campbell is virtual from South Carolina today. Still talking Titans. If you want to join in on the conversation, feel free to text or call 615-737-1025, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, or watch our stream, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, or the Game Nashville app. The app's always very convenient. I put my little AirPods in, go for a nice mom walk during this nice Saturday. I'm not a mom, but I'm just saying. Oh, Elijah, first mute of the day.
No.
I hope you just muted again. There we
All
go.
right. Am I unmuted? Did I un-Joe Rexroad myself?
It only took you 4 times.
Oh, man. So I looked down and I saw where it was unmuted, but then I clicked it again. I think Nick might have also pressed. I think we were thinking the same thing.
I have no idea. I think you were all the way up, but I think you just confused yourself for half a second.
That's okay.
I brought you back.
If it makes you feel
I did.
better.
I scared myself.
If it makes you feel better, Joe on Friday, this is just classic Friday, they're on an interview and his mic was on and then he thought that he muted it. And he coughed really loud into the microphone. And then when he went to ask a question to Nicholas Petit-Frere, which we are going to hear that interview coming up in our second hour.
It was a very good interview.
So you'll actually hear this situation. Then he muted and then was trying to ask a question, and it was just gold. It was radio gold.
Oh, that is incredible. And it's also the most Joe thing. I love that man to death because of the unintentional hijinks. I think he might be the most unintentionally funniest person at the station.
Oh, he's just classic. His dad jokes, just everything about it. Joe Rexroad. Yeah. Can you hear him 6 a.m., 10 a.m., Monday through Friday, and me,
nice
and
plug.
Robbie. Nice plug. But, Elijah, I teased it before the break. Of course, it's what better season is it than preseason
Lists.
predictions before training camp, when we've just basically are basing it off of last season, how the team ended out their season and what they did in the draft and as well as offseason moves. But obviously, there's still time, and training camp hasn't even started. We are far, far ahead. But I'm going to have you guess, who do you think is number one?
In the entire NFL, I'll say the Rams. I think most people will keep it the consensus, the defending Super Bowl champion, the Rams, if I had to guess.
Yep, the Rams are, these are the preseason polls by CBS Sports. Rams are coming in at 1. Basically they have pretty much everybody returning as far as really important roles and everything like that. OBJ, though, is a wide receiver. I know he is also coming off another ACL injury, but he's another guy out there that is probably still going to be looking for a home. I know it probably scares Tennessee fans, or really any franchise, just because he came off an ACL injury and then tore his ACL again in the Super Bowl, which is just
a little concerning.
Yeah, very concerning. But as far as cost-wise, the Rams paid him in Bitcoin, and I know that sounds really weird, but that is.
Can't figure that one out.
Hey, you don't even got to worry about the cap. I guess you do, but as far as Bitcoin, John Robinson, you got any Bitcoins? You got any Bitcoins to give him?
Yeah. How much does Bitcoin cost against a salary cap in the NFL? That is so above my head, but if anyone has an answer to that, I would love to know. Well, but if he stayed in Bitcoin, maybe you can get him on a discount.
The irony of it was he lost money during his season there because Bitcoin. I don't really understand any of that, but I just thought I was like, oh,
I know the value's gone down a little bit, maybe a lot of it, and if that's the case, then he would have parlayed one of his best, most impactful seasons as a football player and got nothing from it.
Well, hey, he got a Super Bowl, so.
A Super Bowl, yeah. He's got a nice little ring he can pawn off if he needs money. So.
Yeah, right. I'm pretty sure he's probably doing good money-wise. But coming in at number 2, no surprise, Bills. Then it goes Bills, Chiefs, Packers, no surprise there. Bucks, Bengals, Chargers. I'm really excited to see the Chargers this year, and I think they're kind of just forgotten about a little bit just because they weren't in the postseason last year. But I think that, first off, they got Khalil Mack, and then also Justin Herbert. I think it's going to be one of those quarterbacks. I mean, his season last year, his numbers were, historic for a rookie.
Not a bad MVP candidate, for a guy like him. And Joe Burrow are the same draft class, and Joe Burrow wouldn't have been considered better if it wasn't for that playoff run. If you just looked at those two guys in the regular season, I think most people would have picked Justin Herbert. He's a stud. I think he's going to this is going to be one of those years where you really consider him as a top 5 quarterback in the National Football League. Chargers will be no joke.
No,
they stacked up.
I completely agree. I think this is gonna be that year where he really emerges. And like you said, if they were just to look at stat lines between him and Joe Burrow, you would be like, oh, Justin Herbert had a way bigger season, but obviously Joe Burrow then goes on to take his team to the Super Bowl. Broncos number 8, obviously they got Russell Wilson in the offseason, which was huge. 49ers, obviously the quarterback's still kind of we haven't heard much about the whole Jimmy G, Trey Lance situation going on.
A weird dynamic there. I don't even know if they know what they want to do with it.
Hey,
because it depends on what they feel about Lance. If he's actually the future. If he is, I think you play him this year. But if not, then you're gonna repeat last season, I guess.
Well, maybe you do a 2 quarterback team. You could do a couple schemes of both of them. There you go. Then we got Rams, Eagles, Cowboys, Commanders, Colts, Browns, and coming in at 16, Tennessee Titans.
At 16, so halfway through the league, right? 16.
So CBS Sports, their little blurb on them was, it's all about Ryan Tannehill handling himself in the key moments in big games. That's why the pressure is on him, and certainly why they drafted Malik Willis. Which I would disagree a little bit on the Malik Willis part, only because, Tennessee knew that Tannehill was going to be their starting quarterback. I think Malik Willis, all of us, I think, were surprised as to how far he dropped in the draft. And I think as far as where Tennessee stood, it was, he could be a franchise quarterback someday, and he's dropped far enough in the draft where, yeah, we've gotten the other guys that we need ahead of him. He's the best person on our board right now. We got to get him. I don't necessarily think they drafted him to kind of light a fire under Tannehill's, but what are your thoughts on that, Elijah?
I just think it's more of it was a low risk thing. He fell to the point where it's not a huge bust. You're not wasting first round capital on it. Low risk, potentially a very high reward. So, I think that's why they drafted Willis. But honestly, 16th, I think sounds fair for the Titans. I've laid out my concerns to the offense, and if you can't put up points in this league to contend with all the other teams you're going to be playing, then yeah, it's going to be really hard to win in this league. The Titans have a tough schedule. A couple weeks ago, we mentioned the schedule of the Titans and all the quarterbacks they face. It is a murderer's row of just the quarterbacks that they're going to have to play this year. And a lot of the teams they played in the cross-divisional matchups got better. Cowboys are still pretty damn good. Eagles got a lot better. Don't know what the Commanders and Giants are, but
nobody does.
Nobody does, exactly. And those are still games the Titans have found ways to lose in the past. So honestly, 16th sounds about right, because 16th means you're about a 9-win team, 10, 11 wins. 11 wins is a ceiling. That sounds about right to me. I don't have much pushback on that list.
Elijah, I don't either. I think, as far as, I think defense, I think they're top 3 probably in the entire NFL, top 5 maybe to some people in the entire NFL, but the offense, still a big question mark, which obviously is going to push them down the list. And then obviously there's kind of a question mark as to just not having an elite quarterback, not having a Tom Brady, not having an Aaron Rodgers, and now a Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow. But In the second hour, we are going to talk about, where do the Titans fit into the AFC South? What are the Colts looking at this year? We're going to hear from Stephen Holder of The Athletic. He covers the Colts beat. We're also going to hear from Nicholas Petit-Frere, who is a rookie on the Titans this year on the offensive end. You're listening to Campbell and Knezovic on 102.5 The Game, 106.3, and the Game Nashville app.
Every Wednesday at 5, join us for Jared versus Joe as they debate all of the big topics in sports, presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment and Mayweather Boxing and Fitness on ESPN 102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
ElectronicExpress.com. We make it happen.
Hey, Robbie Stanley here to tell you the NBA playoffs are heating up, and you can make every game feel like Game 7 on FanDuel Sportsbook, an official partner of the NBA. Throughout the playoffs, all customers can place a no-sweat same-game parlay each week. You'll get up to $20 in free bets if you don't win. FanDuel has so many different ways to play, and best of all, when you do win, you'll get paid faster than a fast break. I've told you about my Miami Heat. I think they take down the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Final. Give me Bam Adebayo over on points as well. But you take it any way you want to take it. If you're new to FanDuel, just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app, sign up with promo code ROB to get your first bet risk-free up to $1,000. Once again, that promo code is ROB. And if you already have an account, you're all set to bet. Either way, you get up to $20 in free bets if your same-game parlay during the playoffs doesn't win. FanDuel Sportsbook, an official partner of the NBA. Must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. Refund issued as non-withdrawable free bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Max free bet of $20 per week. Restrictions apply. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Got a gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
If you've got a yard, you may plan on digging in it. Like to build an addition, put in a pool, or bury your pirate booty. But you should know that throughout the country, there may be pipelines buried underground. And if you hit one, you've got trouble. Sorry. So before you dig, call 811 to have any buried pipelines located and marked at no charge. For more tips on pipeline safety, visit pipesafety.org. A message from the Tennessee Gas Association, Tennessee Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
From the Hillside Medical Game Studios, WPRT-FM Pegram, WPUC HD2 Laverne, Nashville's exclusive home for the Nashville Predators.
ESPN
102.5 and 106.3.
Terang, it's a high fly ball.
The leading receiver.
Awesome Game 7.
Checkered flag in the air.
The Game.
A Cromwell Media Station.
From behind the board to behind the mic. This is Campbell and Knezovic with Elijah Campbell and Michelle Knezovic on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game and on the Game Nashville app.
Welcome back in Hour 2, Campbell and Knezovic. I'm Michelle Knezovic from the Hillside Game Studios. We got Nick on the board. Elijah Campbell signing in from South Carolina this morning. Hour 2, Elijah. And we are getting into all the preseason predictions, getting into all of that, probably overreacting, because we're not actually going to know until they hit the field. But that's okay, because we wouldn't have jobs. Well, I hope we would. But.
Very true. Overreacting is our job. That's what we're paid to do.
Yeah, exactly. And it's fun. If you want to weigh in on the conversation on the Tennessee Titans, we're also going to be talking Indianapolis Colts, Jags, and Texans, taking a look around the whole AFC South and where Tennessee fits in it. You can text us at 615-737-1025 or call us, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, or watch us on the stream, driven by the law offices of Man Gentry. We're live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook now. So you can see our beautiful faces. Elijah is wearing his Campbell Fighting Campbell's t-shirt. I am wearing my 102.5 The Game. Wow, I'm logoed out this morning, and I almost put on my hat. That would have been like a lot of promotion.
Oh, wow. That's triple logoing in one shot.
Yeah, right? Like I'm a walking advertisement right now. Okay, Elijah, I previewed it a little bit, taking a look at the AFC South. You know, heading into this year, I hate to count them out because I do think that the Jags will have a bit of a turnaround year with Trevor Lawrence coming into his second season, also just not having Mr. Urban Meyer there just to
sabotage the entire operation, yes.
To ask them, yeah, you should watch out for that 99 guy. You mean Aaron Donald?
The best player in the league, yes. That guy. Yeah, might want to watch out for him.
Hopefully Duval down there gets it back together. I mean, I think that at least Trevor Lawrence will have another year under his belt. I mean, considering the whole first year was about a dumpster fire.
Total disaster, yeah.
Texans finally got rid of Deshaun Watson and all of that drama surrounding that, which now the Browns have that, and they are kind of, there's, each and every day I feel like we hear a little bit more information. Still don't even know if Deshaun Watson will hit the field with the Browns this year, how many games that he will be suspended for. I'm assuming 6, maybe more, but that's still
feels like 6, 4 to 6, I think is probably what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, hey, that's half the season. So we could see former backup quarterback for the Colts, Jacoby Brissett, get some snaps in, because the Colts have just been in these last couple years on this quarterback carousel, Elijah, right? After Luck retired, then it was Jacoby Brissett was the backup for a bit, then Phillip Rivers, then Carson Wentz. I almost forgot about him for a second. And now,
it's a very forgettable year for him. Yes.
Yeah, right. Now they have got Matt Ryan of the Atlanta Falcons, and we cannot forget, they just signed as their backup Super Bowl champion, Nick Foles. Dun, 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 dun. So
That's right. Another insurance policy.
So the Colts have been in this quarterback carousel, and just, as one door opens, another one closes. And I feel like all of these quarterbacks, essentially after Luck, have been on this 1-year trial period with Frank Reich and Chris Ballard. It was no surprise that at the end of last season, Chris Ballard made it very, very obvious that even if Carson Wentz doesn't go to another team, that they are willing to just kind of eat the money and just cut him, because they did not want him as their quarterback. And we saw a lot from the Colts this year because they were in that in-season hard knocks, and we saw, glimpses of just the lack of leadership from Carson Wentz. And Stephen Holder, we have on a lot on Robbie and Rex Road, who's the athletic writer for the Colts and also covers the NFL as a whole, told us that it was kind of obvious that when you go from Phillip Rivers, who is a great leader, right? You just think of him with his 9 children, right? Just a great leader. He's like everybody's just dad. I feel like he's just like a typical dad.
Rocks the bolo tie to the press conference kind of fella. Yeah.
Well, and when I was covering the Colts, that Phillip Rivers was the quarterback, and it was such a positive response from, the coaching staff and the players. Everybody was raving about him, and even the media. Like, he was just such a great personality, positive, and just seemed like everybody kind of looked up to him, right? And then you get Carson Wentz, and it's just not the same when it came to the whole vaccination situation with him, and then obviously his injuries, and it just wasn't a good fit, and he wasn't a good leader at that position for the Colts. So now Matt Ryan comes in from the Falcons. This Colts team already was a solid team, right? I mean, they have great pieces. They've got Jonathan Taylor, which we all know that big discussion between him and Derrick Henry. They've got Darius Leonard.
Valid discussion now.
They got Darius Leonard. They've got Pittman Jr., and obviously the list goes on and on. But do you think that this Colts team, I mean, Tennessee swept them last year, but do you think that this Colts team, the quarterback, if Matt Ryan is a fit and can, fit into the offense and transition nicely for them, do you think that this is just the piece that was missing and that the Colts could potentially, I know this is, sweep the Titans this year? It's always a tough game.
It always is, and they've had a history of sweeping the Titans and during the Peyton Manning days, but I think the Colts and Titans are almost carbon copies of each other. The defense is going to be the strength of both teams. And when it comes to the offense, the quarterback's a question mark. You're going to lean heavily on the run game. Your best player on offense, your best weapon is the running back. And then you kind of have to evaluate, when you're evaluating these two, like I can almost concede that these defenses are a draw. The Colts and Titans, really, really good defenses, 2 of the best defenses in the AFC. And the Colts got better by adding Stephon Gilmore and Yannick Ngakoue. Offensively, though, I mean, if you look at the quarterbacks, I think Ryan Tannehill and Matt Ryan are a tie. I think that's a draw.
Yeah, they had pretty even stats last season.
Yeah, Matt Ryan, Tannehill is a real thing. You can just combine them into one. Running backs, I mean, Jonathan Taylor. Yeah, see. But Jonathan Taylor might be the best running back in the NFL when Derrick Henry's not healthy. If Derrick Henry is Derrick Henry and that Tennessee Titans offensive line can run block like they did last year, even with the absence of Roger Saffold, yeah, I mean, you can maybe concede the Titans have a better run game, but I don't know how that offensive line is going to look. We've already laid out those issues. And if it's not what it was last year, the Colts will have a better run game because they will have a better offensive line. They have the best run blocker in the league, arguably, in Quentin Nelson, and that's going to help out a lot. And then when you look at the wide receiving core, the biggest thing is they're not deep. But at least with the Colts, Michael Pittman Jr., I think, is a better wide receiver than Robert Woods post ACL surgery north of the age of 30. And you don't know what you have from Treylon Burks. You don't know what you have from the rest of everybody else. And the tight end position, I think the Titans might have a little bit of an edge. I love Okonkwo, and Austin Hooper's a solid pass catcher. For the Colts, I like Mo Alley-Cox. Solid, not an elite tight end. And Jelani Woods, 6'7", draftee from the University of Virginia, could be a stud one day, but you don't know about him either. Could. Keyword, could. But the offenses are very similar to me. I think the winner of this division is going to have 9 or 10 wins, and it's going to be the Colts or the Titans. Because I think, like you, the Jags are going to maybe split one from one of those two teams, whether it be the Colts or the Titans. Like, I know it's not Friday, it's not Shoot Your Shot Friday, but if I was to shoot my shot and get a bold prediction,
call your shot, Elijah.
Call your shot, shoot your shot. Yeah.
Shoot your shot is Friday. Like sliding into DMs.
that is, isn't it? Yeah, a different connotation there. Calling my shot that the Jacksonville Jaguars probably take a game from the Titans this year. It's very possible.
Well, listen, the Colts have not beat the Jags in Jacksonville in almost 14 years. Isn't that insane?
Yeah. That's incredible, because the Jags have had some bad teams, and the Colts, quite frankly, have had some good ones. So the fact that hasn't happened is pretty mind-blowing. But yeah, I can totally see that being that scenario unfolding this year. But when you're comparing the Colts and the Titans too, I think they are very similar teams. I can easily see the winner of this division going 10-7 and the second place team going 9-8, and it's either going to be the Colts or the Titans.
Well, and the thing about these two teams is that unfortunately, they play each other. Both games, one is October 2nd and one is October 23rd. So they're going to be
like 2 weeks apart.
Quick turnaround games where once those are played, essentially the division's locked up.
It depends on what happens before then too. Like if say the Colts have a 2-game lead already in the Titans stumble out of the gate. They take both those games from the Colts, and then theoretically you're tied. Then it's just 2 plays well from there on out. But you want that tiebreaker of winning both of those games. Like that is monumental, because I think at the worst, the Titans are going 3-1 against the Jags and Texans. I would be stunned if the Texans beat the Titans at least next year. I think if they're going to lose to either of those teams, it's going to be the Jags. But I see 3-1 as a real possibility against those other 2 teams. And there's a big difference between being, 3-3 in your division and 5-1 in your division. 5-1 will win you the division if that's your division record. 3-3 will not.
No, you put it perfectly there, Elijah. And we talked a lot about the Colts, like we said. Stephen Holder from The Athletic, we're going to play an interview coming up in the next segment. He was on with Robbie and Rexroad, and he was actually at the Colts, OTAs this week, and he kind of gave us a little look into what's going on up there in Indy. Elijah, you are signing off with us today. Any fun plans for Memorial Day weekend? I know you're going to be in South Carolina.
Yeah, just chilling out here in the Palmetto State, kind of scoping things out. Never been to Columbia, South Carolina before, so we're here on enjoying the weekend here. So, yeah, we're about to figure that out once we get off the air here. So.
Well, love to hear it. And everybody listening, we hope that you are having a great Memorial Day weekend. We are going to say goodbye to Elijah right now. Coming up after the break, we are going to hear from Stephen Holder from The Athletic. He's going to give us insight on the Indianapolis Colts and the NFL as a whole. You're listening to Campbell and Knezovic on 102.5 The Game, 106.3, and the Game Nashville app.
Do you have that one person or thing that just makes you mad? Join us every Friday at noon on the DDC for You Just Made the List. Fueled by Parman Energy. Visit ParmanEnergy.com, your one-stop petroleum solution, and try Star Movie on the DDC on ESPN 102.5 The Game.
You just made the list!
Get a great deal on versatile Kubota equipment today, like Kubota BX and L Series compact tractors, part of our under 100 horsepower tractor lineup rated #1 for reliability. Z Series mowers and Sidekick utility vehicles. Stop by your local Kubota dealer today. Bring home the Kubota L2501 tractor for 0 down, 0% APR for up to 60 months, plus save up to $1,100 now through June 30th. See us or go to KubotaUSA.com for more details.
2 locations to serve you, Columbia Kubota or Franklin Kubota. Visit them online at ColumbiaKubota.com or FranklinKubota.com.
You love Days Delta 8 products. Now follow them on Instagram for special promotions, giveaways, contests for cash prizes, and cannabis education. Make your next Dazed purchase at any of the 3,500 nationwide stores that hold their products in Informed One. Follow Days.D8Official. That's Days.D8Official on Instagram to see this truly single-source Delta 8 brand behind the scenes. Dazed 8, the highest quality standard of Delta 8.
Memorial Day started in May 1868 to honor your family, friends, and others who have given their lives in the service of our country. Monday at 3 p.m., we will play taps in their memory. Please stop what you're doing for a brief moment as we think about and honor them. Monday at 3 p.m.
If you missed the latest edition of Talking with TD.
Former Maryland, now Titans tight end, Chig Okonkwo, from college to the NFL, there's even more learning that you could acquire. Would you say?
Oh yeah, there's so much more learning, and I've figured that out in the short time that I've been here. That even now, like I remember coming from high school, going to college, I remember saying, "Oh, I really don't know anything about football," and now I'm saying the same thing. Like, "Oh, I really don't know anything about football, really," because the NFL is just a completely different game. You know, it's all these different rules, these new rules. You know, different body types, a lot stronger guys. There's different techniques you got to use now, and just different schemes and all these different things. So there's definitely a huge learning curve that, you know, I'm excited for. I'm excited for the challenge to learn it all.
Search Talking with TD today on your favorite podcast platform. The newest edition drops every Wednesday at theGameNashville.com and the Game Nashville app.
Hey, Ray Jeter here with Harness. Are you looking to take ownership in a position that will support your growth and development? We are an excavation and site utilities contractor. Several things set us apart from our competition, but we take the most pride in the professional development of our people. We have multiple openings for operators, pipe layers, and laborers. Our pay and benefits are second to none, including our 401k program. Apply today at selectharness.com. Harness LLC. Build people, move dirt.
Never miss a moment of the show.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah! Subscribe to the Campbell and Knezovic podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. You're listening to Campbell and Knezovic
on ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game, and on the Game Nashville app.
Welcome back into Campbell and Knezovic, live from the Hillside Medical Game Studio. I'm Michelle Knezovic. Nick Keyser is on the board, spinning some tunes. If you want to join the conversation, you can watch us streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, live every day. Our video streaming is brought to you by the law offices of Amanda Gentry. And like I said, if you want to weigh in on the conversation, 1025 The Game phone and text line, text us or call us, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. The phone number is 615-737-1025. Elijah has said goodbye to us, Nick. He is going to enjoy his Memorial Day weekend. We are on the show for the next 45 minutes. Right now, you guys are going to hear an interview from Stephen Holder of The Athletic. He is on Robbie and Rex Road quite a bit. He covers the Indianapolis Colts in depth. He was there to watch the Colts inside their practice today. Also takes a look at the NFL as a whole and all the storylines going on. Here is the interview by Robbie and Rex Road with Stephen Holder this week.
Welcome back in, Robbie and Rex Road here on ESPN 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rex Road, Michelle Knezovic here with you on this Friday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. And we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in our friend Stephen Holder from The Athletic. Stephen, what's going on? How are we doing?
Doing great. How about you guys?
We're great. Appreciate you taking time to be on with us here this morning. So, Stephen, we were just talking about this, looking around at the rest of the AFC. I think Joe and I identified the Jets, the Texans, and the Jags as the three teams we feel pretty good about not being playoff teams. And that's about it. Can you remember a conference really ever in the history of the NFL being quite like the AFC figures to be this year on paper?
Yeah, it's really intriguing on paper. I just think with all the talent that has come in, there's almost a little bit of an imbalance. I mean, it feels like the old Western Conference in the NBA, you know, where it was like, man, if you're in the West, you just got to barely make the playoffs. You know, I mean, it does feel that way. obviously the expanded playoffs will help, but there's going to be, I think, some good teams on the outside looking in. This is definitely, I think, a new day for the AFC.
Stephen, I know you've been able to catch a little bit of Colts action, here this spring here recently. What are your thoughts of Matt Ryan so far, and maybe anything else that stands out?
Yeah, I think with Matt Ryan, it's potentially, and again, everything's on paper right now, and we're doing a lot of projecting. But I think the difference he is going to make may be bigger than we really appreciate right now. I think that's possibly true. And the reason I say that is I just think this offense under Frank Reich, it's going to be able to function the way it was intended with Matt Ryan. This is not necessarily shade to Carson Wentz, but I think that it's a timing offense. And if you recall when Phillip Rivers was quarterback here a couple of years ago, you saw a lot of these crossers and these wide receivers getting yards after the catch and really being productive that way because the ball was on time and guys were getting the ball in an accurate position where they could run with the football. And look, they have to do a very good job of play design here. They draw stuff up pretty effectively. And I think really what it takes is execution to get that stuff done. And already, just in a couple of practices, what you can see is it's very add a lot more juice to this offense in Indianapolis.
Stephen, looks like Kenny Moore is looking for a new contract with the Colts. How do you see this situation playing out for Kenny Moore and the Colts?
Yeah, these things are always delicate. When you've got a guy with multiple years left, you've got 2 years left on that contract, and certainly the Colts are worried about setting a precedent here, and by renegotiating this contract. At the same time, I do think that you can make a pretty compelling argument that he signed this deal in 2019. He got an $8 million bonus then. But he has, he's got no more guarantees left. He's averaged, if you want to call it a 4-year extension or a 5-year contract total from the day he signed it, it's either a $7 million average or $8 or $9 million average. Look, there are 22 cornerbacks in the NFL making in excess or an average of $10 million a year. He's not close to that. So the question then becomes, do you want to consider him among that group? I think probably so. He made a Pro Bowl this year, and what he is asked to do for the Colts is a lot more than what people describe him, which is technically a slot cornerback. He is effectively, I think, the third most important player on their defense, behind Darius Leonard and DeForest Buckner, just because of the litany of things they ask him to do. So I get why he's asking for the contract. I also understand that the Colts, they're very, very adamant about not renegotiating. So it's a standoff, and I don't know who ultimately blinks first.
Yes. So, Stephen, we've talked quite a bit about the Titans' offensive line, and its role in Ryan Tannehill's regression last year, but the importance of pass protection. Losing Roger Saffold, not a great thing. I'm wondering, with the Colts, obviously a lot of talent up there, but it's not like protection was great last year. There were some struggles, some moving parts. How do you feel about that group at this point?
I would agree. I do think that there was definitely regression from the offensive line. I think for the first time since the Quentin Nelson draft class, that was probably the first year they took a backward step, I felt like, on the offensive line. That being said, I do think they're going in the right direction. A couple things to note: a lot of that, or some of it at least, was the product of injuries. Quentin Nelson played hurt all year. Braden Smith, the right tackle, he was hurt most of the year, and definitely I think that showed in his performance. Ryan Kelly, he and his wife had a family tragedy. He missed several games as a Pro Bowl center. So you had your three best players were were impacted. Their performance or their availability was impacted last year. So I don't think it's a surprise that they took a step back, but the fact is they did. And now, from what we know at least, Quentin Nelson is healthy, Braden Smith is healthy, Ryan Kelly's back. The left tackle spot's a little, I guess, up in the air. But they did spend a third-round pick on Bernard Raymond from Central Michigan. They think that they got a steal there, and he's going to get a shot along with Matt Pryor, a veteran who they really like, who did perform well there instead of Eric Fisher at times last season. So if they figure out left tackle, I feel pretty good about it. The rest of the spots, I think they're pretty solid, frankly, and I think they can have a pretty solid line this year. Matt Ryan, frankly, will consider this an upgrade from what he had in Atlanta. So from his perspective, he feels pretty good about it. So that I can tell you for sure.
Stephen Holder from The Athletic on with us here on Robbie and Rex Road. So, Stephen, how do you view the Titans with the offseason that they've had? Obviously, you trade A.J. Brown to Philadelphia. They drafted Treylon Burks. Joe brought up Roger Saffold being gone to the Bills as well. Not a ton of additions. You did bring in Robert Woods from the Rams. But overall, how do you view the Titans right now with the offseason that they've had?
It's interesting because I think we have seen this offseason, really the past couple of off seasons, we have seen teams that have come up short really get aggressive in the offseason. Or just in general, teams have gotten pretty aggressive in the offseason. The Titans have gone the other direction. They've kind of stood pat for the most part. And I think it's interesting when you factor in the playoff results that they had and then to have the offseason that followed, I think that's mildly surprising. From there certainly are financial constraints, but frankly, one of their best players is going out the door, and I'm talking about A.J. Brown, and certainly Roger Saffold doesn't help either. So I think that would be my first assessment. Just what does that tell us about how they feel about their football team? Does it send a message that they think they're okay? Do they not need to be more aggressive? I don't know. It's interesting. I think that it certainly puts a lot of heat, I think, on the men running the show because look, when you have a lot of regular season success, and they have, and they should be lauded for that. That team has been pretty formidable. I mean, they're not a team that's really a pushover. Really the last few years, even though their record doesn't necessarily always reflect that they were very good, they're not a team that people just walk in and have their way with. And, they play consistent defense, so that's always going to get you places or take you places. They also have some pretty formidable skill positions there, skill position players. And I think Russell Wilson is going to really accentuate those guys. I mean, think about who's been playing quarterback there in recent years, and yet they have really, I think, displayed a lot of talent there at wide receiver. Now, think about what Russell Wilson can do for that group and taking it to the next level. So that team's got all kinds of potential. I mean, now the flip side of that is the AFC West is absolute murderer's row, and I worry if you're one of those teams, I would worry, do they all beat each other up? And, what does that do in the end in terms of the final result and everyone's record? So that's just a fascinating division. It's gone from, a division where Kansas City basically ran things to now being, who knows? I think it's wide open. It's frankly wide open. You still like Kansas City maybe, but it's not as if they didn't have a big change this offseason, for the negative with Tyreek Hill. So that's a fascinating division, and Russell Wilson is a game changer, no question about it. The Raiders are better, the Chargers are better. That's the division I'm watching.
Stephen Holder from The Athletic, our guest here on Robbie and Rex Road. Stephen, great stuff as always. Appreciate you making time for us this morning.
That was Stephen Holder from The Athletic on Robbie and Rex Road this morning. Had a lot of good takeaways on the Titans, on the Colts, and the NFL as a whole. I have a couple takeaways from this interview that I'm going to give you all on the other side of the break. You are listening to Campbell and Knezovic on 102.5 The Game, 106.3, and the Game Nashville app.
You love the game.
Duchesne scores! Titans touchdown!
We live the game.
They did not make the playoffs. Coaches are figuring out what his role is.
We are.
Terang, it's a high fly ball.
Learn a new offense.
Awesome game set.
Checker flag in the air.
The game. Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Finishing jobs on time, never being idle, and powerful equipment. Meade has the John Deere excavating equipment and the smart grade technology solutions for you and your business. Power your business with a new, used, or rented excavator and get the performance you expect and service you can rely on. Call us today for the equipment built as tough and reliable as you, or visit us at meadtractor.com. That's meadtractor.com.
In a world where human interaction seems to be reduced to chats and clicks and emails, where transactions are measured only by speed, where corporate policies overrule common sense, sometimes you just want to go old school. Welcome to Genesis Diamonds, a refreshing experience where personal relationships and authentic interaction are the norm, not the exception. At Genesis, you're here celebrating something awesome in your life, and we want to know all about it. We want to hear your story, listen to your requests, and be a meaningful part of whatever occasion this is. A proposal, an anniversary, a birthday, graduation, push gift, sweet 16. If it's important to you, it's important to us. So we don't care how long it takes. We're not paid on commission, and we're not beholden to some corporate rule book. We just want to help you get what you want to make it into a special memory. So take a break from modern shopping and go old school with us at Genesis. Let's start a real relationship that you can count on for life. Genesis Diamonds, Green Hills, and Cool Springs.
If you missed the latest from Stillman and Company, delivered by TriStar Moving.
Here's where the Malik hype is going to become a factor, what he does in the preseason. Now, he'll be going up against second and third stringers because nobody plays their starters, and the Titans have 2 joint scrimmages. Arizona, they'll scrimmage, and they won't play the starters because they would never play the starters in the last game anyways. They usually don't play the backup quarterback in that last preseason game either, which means you're going to get a lot of Malik. What's crazy about the preseason is if I were to tell you Tannehill's not going to take a meaningful snap, like that would normally be bad for people watching the preseason. But it's actually going to be good for people watching the preseason because we're going to want to see Malik. And if Malik goes off in the preseason, then when Tannehill throws interceptions, people will be like, we want Malik. We want Malik. But if Malik looks like he doesn't have a clue out there, people are not going to be clamoring for Logan Woods.
Tune in Stillman and Company with Jared Stillman. Weekday afternoons from 2 to 6.
on ESPN
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Hey, Ray Jeter here with Harness. Are you looking to take ownership in a position that will support your growth and development? We are an excavation and site utilities contractor. Several things set us apart from our competition, but we take the most pride in the professional development of our people. We have multiple openings for operators, pipe layers, and laborers. Our pay and benefits are second to none, including our 401k program. Apply today at selectharness.com. Harness LLC. Build people, move dirt.
This is Colton Sissons, and this is Smashville.
Feeds now Sissons coming on from the left circle, and Colton Sissons puts it in the net.
This is the flagship of the Nashville Predators radio network. ESPN 102.5 The Game.
You're listening to Campbell and Knezovic.
They're going to be huge.
on ESPN
102.5 and 106.3 The Game and on the Game Nashville app.
Campbell and Knezovic off and running. 30 minutes left of the show today. I'm Michelle Knezovic. Elijah Campbell is on vacation for this next part of the show. He was on with us earlier this morning. He is in South Carolina, soaking up that nice weather. We've got Nick Keyser on the board with me today. Jared Cassidy looks like he is also on vacation. Nick, Memorial Day weekend, you and I are working, but, I mean, we work in sports, so what could be better, right?
Absolutely. You know, there's no better time than to be talking sports when you're celebrating American things. So why not?
I love it. Well, listen, better time would be maybe a little bit more going on in sports. I would like maybe at March, maybe October. But like we talked about before, and like you just heard from Stephen Holder from The Athletic, who covers the Colts, this is the time of the year where we like to look at teams and we like to predict how well or how bad we think they will be in the NFL this year, in the 2022 season. Who's going to beat who? We're going to do all these preseason projections, and yes, they probably will change. Tennessee Titans coming off the 1 seed. You know, nobody will forget that playoff run and that heartbreaking loss to Cincinnati in Nissan Stadium this past year. And one of the biggest takeaways, Stephen Holder, who was actually at that game, he was writing with our very own Joe Rexrode. They were tag teaming for the divisional round, had something really interesting to say, and I wrote it down in my notes when we were listening to that interview, again, from Robbie and Rexrode this week. And he said that a lot of the times what you see in the NFL is when a team comes up short in the playoffs, which is exactly what we saw happen to this Tennessee team. I mean, throughout the season, we saw them overcome adversity, and they broke the record for most players activated, right? They had so many players injured, players were on COVID lists. It was just a never-ending cycle of, okay, who's going to get activated this week? Who are they going to find? Because, unfortunately, it was just hard for players to stay on the field. And obviously in the NFL, you're going to have players get hurt. But for this team, it was player after player after A.J. Brown, a crucial player. Julio Jones could barely stay on the field. And then the big domino that fell was when Derrick Henry broke his foot and, wasn't able to come back for the remaining of the season until the playoff push. And one thing that Stephen Holder said that I thought was a really great point by him, that said, usually when you see these teams fall short in the playoff run, that in the offseason, they're very aggressive and they're in still that go for it mode. And that is something that we didn't see with Tennessee this year. I mean, for starters, losing your second best offensive player in A.J. Brown. And if they didn't lose A.J. Brown, I think I would view this statement different. Because I think that when they got Austin Hooper and when they got Robert Woods, you're looking at this offense like, oh, wow. Ryan Tannehill's got A.J. Brown. He's got Robert Woods, and then they're thinking, oh, maybe the Titans will then draft another wide receiver as their first-round pick. But thinking in addition to those two. And then they also get Tannehill, finally a tight end back in Austin Hooper. Whereas we didn't see Tennessee be aggressive in the offseason after coming up so short to the Super Bowl. I mean, essentially, in my head, when I covered this game and we were previewing it all week with the Bengals and everything, there was not one point in my head I thought that they would lose this game. And I'm sorry for any fans listening right now, and this is just bringing up old grievances. But I thought that maybe there still is another move that Tennessee has to make. And I think that, the offense is taking a step back, but I do think that this defense is taking another step forward, and that it could be the second, third, some could even say first best defense in the entire NFL. I mean, the fact that you have Bud Dupree coming off, last year you have him coming off an ACL injury, only had, I think, 3 or 4 sacks the entire season, but also he was another player who was on and off the field, and then he ended up having an abdominal injury. I think that this year Bud Dupree is going to have a huge year. We played this little game. I played it with Junie, who's one of our workers here. He's a co-host. Us 3 are going to be a duo on Monday. We're going to be hosting the show from 9 to 12:30 because of Memorial Day. Nobody's getting up at 6 a.m. and having to host a show, so we're going to get to sleep in a little bit, Nick. We played a little under-over game, and it was, do you think Bud Dupree will have under or over 8.5 sacks this year?
Probably under.
See, I originally said under as well, but I think with more thought, and like we said, this is prediction season, that he's getting paid big. And I think that him and Jeffrey Simmons as a combo are going to have a monster year. Then you've also got Ola Adeni. You've got Harold Landry, right? Those huge guys on defense, you still have them. And we saw in a lot of games, I think of the Rams game this past year, where the defense won you that game. David Long Jr., Kevin Byard, then you draft McCreary, so you're going to have a little bit more depth. I just said depth. It's hard to speak this morning. Depth on your secondary. You've got Christian Fulton coming off, a year where he's really emerging at that corner position and still young, but, under Kevin Byard, who's the leader of the defense, I think that it's really promising for the Titans. And then I think, although you might not have, a potentially generational, well, not generational, but, high-level wide receiver in A.J. Brown, I think that the offense won't take as big of a step back as people might think. I mean, you see A.J. Brown, and he is that diamond, right? He is the diamond in the offense paired up right with Derrick Henry. And I think people think, Derrick Henry did get hurt last year, and he does have a screw in his foot, but I personally think that he is going to come back and have a very solid season for this Tennessee team. Maybe not a 2,000-yard season that he was gearing towards 2 in a row last year until he got hurt, but I think that he is still going to be Derrick Henry.
If he's not, there's a big problem.
If he's not, then the Titans are in a very different situation. But let's just say he does. Let's just say he does have, a solid Derrick Henry season. Not a 2,000-yard season, but a solid Derrick Henry season. Tannehill, when he had Arthur Smith as his offensive coordinator and he had a solid tight end, it was different for him. So I think another year under Todd Downing, having a number 1 tight end in Austin Hooper, Robert Woods, who's looking like he is healing great off that ACL injury. Tannehill even said that he loves throwing to him. And, Treylon Burks, if he comes in as a rookie, those A.J. Brown shoes are really, really big to fill, and it's not fair to expect that from him coming into his first season. But I do think if he has, 600, 700-yard season, 5 touchdowns, I think that's fair. I mean, that would be a great, solid rookie season, very promising.
That's a good ceiling.
If
I like
you were
that.
a Tennessee fan. Anything more than that, that's just cupcakes. That's great.
Absolutely.
So I think that we had Adam in Portland call us earlier and say that, he was excited for this offense. And I agree. I think as much, doubt we're putting in this offense because they don't have A.J. Brown, I think as far as weapons, I think that Ryan Tannehill will be okay.
Well, one thing I have to remember too, Michelle, is I remember from his press conference and him saying he didn't have anything to prove. I think he really does. And I think this is a good part where we can inject that conversation again, because it's like, look, you have all these pieces that, could possibly be great, and he still has time to prove himself well. You know what I mean? Like, I really think this is a time where he can seize a moment, seize a good season, and, he's like, oh, I needed, just some good clarity over the game. I rewatched it, and, I think if that game still haunts him, I hope he has this villain season, honestly. I really hope he does.
I think that he has to, or his career's on the line. I think this will be a career-defining season for Ryan Tannehill. And then the big question is, well, what would secure him his job? What type of season would he have to be the quarterback in 2023? And what can he not do, right? So it's hard. You got to look at, what would be the line for him? Where does he have to perform above? And that's something that Tennessee's going to have to figure out, and we're going to watch unfold this year, because now that they have drafted a quarterback in Malik Willis, no, I don't think he's ready to step on the field this year whatsoever. But could be a different story in 2023, and a lot of that will depend on how Ryan Tannehill performs this year. But I think if you're looking at this team, my biggest concern will be the offensive line. And I honestly think that only going to get clarity from it when you see them week 1, but then again, they are playing the Giants, so who really knows? where everybody's going to go. But I would say that would probably be the one concern I have for this team. And, if Ryan Tannehill just builds that chemistry with these guys during training camp, maybe his weapons won't be an issue. Nick, we're going to talk more Titans on the other side. You're listening to Campbell and Knezovic on 102.5 The Game, 106.3, and the Game Nashville app.
Jared Stillman.
This is a team that the entire city is losing their minds over.
Caroline Fenton.
It's one of the youngest teams in the league. They don't have a single player over the age of 30.
Stillman and Company. Afternoons from 2 to 6.
Presented by TriStar Moving.
On Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN.
102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And on the Game Nashville app.
Family Leisure's 31st Memorial Day sale.
DIY pools start at just $19.99. 24-foot pools are only $29.99 installed. 6 months, same as cash.
Great prices on spas and hot tubs. The Cypress Spa by Strong is only $29.99.
I want some new patio furniture. Family Leisure has hundreds of sets on sale.
The Sabre Infrared Grill starts at only $11.99. Complete Bull Grill Island start at only $39.99. Installed with a Sabre grill head. Tanning beds, pool tables, massage chairs on sale now.
Family Leisure, 2 huge locations, Antioch and Franklin.
This week only, the Electronic Express Memorial Day sale is here. Celebrate with brands like Charbroil, Yeti, Samsung, LG, Dyson, and more. Electronic Express has huge savings in every department. Outdoor living, appliances, 4K TVs, smart home, furniture, and more. Plus, save up to 40% on all appliances with up to 36 months free financing. Shop in-store or online at electronicexpress.com with free express delivery. Summer savings at Electronic Express. We make it happen.
If you missed the latest from Robbie and Rex Road.
It's real good.
Is it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's very good. Yeah, it's the same. They do a little funny thing, but they did very well with this one. Yes.
Hey, I've seen the what's that comedian that does the Nick Saban every time, the Joey Molinaro or whatever.
Joey Molinaro. Yeah. That's pretty good. And he has like Brian Kelly coming in there. Hey, y'all, come on now.
I do declare.
I do declare. Y'all need to stop fighting now.
We're all one big happy family here.
That's right.
Love me some Brian Kelly.
Is it Joey? I want to make sure.
I even forgot that he was like. See, that's the other thing. The SEC West is so great. Kiffin, Leach. Think about this: Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach are like the quiet guys right now, and then there's Brian Kelly, Nick Saban, and Jimbo Fisher.
Guys,
amazing.
We need a segment where you
incredible.
all impersonate SEC football coaches.
Hey,
trying to think.
July 20th.
That's what
I can do a little Saban. All right, relative
you gotta get
to
your hands going.
Relative to, I really like the media. All right,
relative to death.
There's but like the in-state coaches like Clark Lee and Josh Heupel. I don't know. Those guys are chill.
They're tame.
Those guys are chill compared. Yeah, the SEC East is just chill. I mean, like Kirby.
Yeah.
Kirby is so boring. Did you see the Kirby quote, by the way?
No.
Oh, yeah. It was like, we're not going to start getting the business of buying players. Like,
okay, Kirby.
All right, Kirby. Okay.
All righty.
Tune in Robbie and Rex with Robbie Stanley and Joe Rexrode. Weekday mornings from 6 to 10 on ESPN, 102.5 The Game, and the Game Nashville app. Later today.
McCutcheon drives with the right and deep. Get up! Here goes!
Down the left field line to the track, looking up, and it is gone.
It's an NL Central matchup between the Brewers and the Cardinals. Coverage begins at 12:30 on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN.
102.5 and 106.3 The Game and the Game Nashville app. You're listening to Campbell and Knezovic
On ESPN.
102.5 and 106.3 The Game and on the Game Nashville app.
Campbell and Knezovic back for our last segment of the day on this beautiful Saturday Memorial Day weekend in Nashville. Hope everybody's having a great day out there. Enjoying some nice sunshine, and then hopefully you've got Monday off for work. But if you have it off or if you have it on for work, I will be hosting with Junie Riddle from 9 a.m. to 12:30. No Robbie and Rexrode from 6 to 10 or the DDC or Stillman and Company. We're going to do a special holiday edition of Campbell and Knezovic, but Junie Riddle will be filling in because Elijah Campbell is on vacation. And then Nick will also be rocking behind the boards with us for that show on Monday. Tease it a little bit before the break. Just talking about the Titans and what is our biggest concern or biggest takeaway heading into this season. Nick, I said that I was concerned about the offensive line and think that, as far as weapon-wise for Ryan Tannehill, things will really come together. If you could just think of one thing, what do you think that yours would be?
I don't know. I think the big thing for me is, and I remember he said something along the lines of the AFC South is changing, and I think that's a big part to do with, the way the Titans can approach the rest of their offseason is how are they assessing how their other teams in the division are going to improve as well. And, that's obviously a development. That's not something that we're going to see, just happen overnight with all these offseason changes. But I'm curious to see, what kind of, the wide receiver market is a very big hot topic right now. And I would love to know the answers, just as much as anybody else does. But it's wide open. Will Fuller's a great option, but he's a liability as far as him staying healthy. But that's the main thing to me that kind of stands out as far as his conversation goes. I think you've nailed it as far as, what else he's touched on so far. But, I think just looking at the grand scheme of things, they're going to have to really bear down on saying, hey, what's going to be best for us this season? And then I guess my small tidbit, too, is he also said something along the lines of, is this a football team that's, going in a positive direction, too? So, I don't know. Like, how are the Titans going to look in 5 years? I think it's dependent on a lot of different guys and how they perform this year.
Well, they're getting younger, and it's going to be it'll be interesting to see how some of these rookies develop and perform in the NFL. So, Nick, we do this segment every week. It's called Give and Go. We love doing a little betting segment. So, basically, I'll set it up, and I will give you, the game and which team you are going to take, whether we're going to take them on the money line, whether we're going to take them on the spread. And if you are listening, you want to send us in your picks, feel free to text in 615-737-1025, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Give me some locks for your weekend. I want to win some money. I bet you guys want to win some money too. What better way to celebrate Memorial Day? Am I right? Okay, first we are starting with the Stanley Cup playoffs. Talked about this game in the first segment with Elijah. This game is going to be at Madison Square Garden. Canes Rangers. It's going to be at 7:10 tonight. If the Canes win, they close out the series. If the Rangers win, they keep the series alive and they head back to Carolina. I think that the Rangers are going to bring this game in, or are going to bring this series into 7 games. So I'm going to take the Rangers tonight. I think that the Canes have just been just not themselves on the road and really haven't been able to, secure a game on the road. So I'm going to say that the Rangers take them into 7 games. They head back down to Carolina, though, and that the Canes will end up closing out the series. Nick, who do you think you're going to take tonight, Rangers or Canes?
This is tough. I would love to just say that the better team's going to win, but I don't think that's the case in this way whatsoever. I would love to take the Rangers. I love doing score predictions. I may think of one in a second as far as how the game could go, but I do think there'll be Game 7. There's been a lot of goal scoring in these playoffs. I mean, just look at the Battle of Alberta. But this series is not that. Now, if they get to the Eastern Conference Finals, yes, I could see more of that. And I really think what separates the Rangers in this scenario, just to give anyone a tidbit on insight, I don't really think that the Hurricanes have a game breaker. Like, they've got Aho and they've got some decent goaltending. I like Shetsiorkin, and I like every player just about on the Rangers offense. I think they can outwork them, and they're on home ice, this evening.
Well, listen, who doesn't love a Game 7? Am I right?
Exactly.
So let's hope they take it to 7. In another Game 7, we're going to talk about switching over to the NBA really quick. I'm going to do these picks rapid fire. We got just about a minute and a half left with you guys. We got Game 7 in the NBA. Boston Celtics, Miami Heat. Last night, the Heat and Jimmy Butler, they stay alive. Jimmy Butler said that Dwayne Wade called him and gave him a little pep talk. Say, hey, put the Heat on your back. Marquette, pride, right? I'm taking the Boston Celtics. I think that they are destined for a matchup between the Warriors, but I really hope that we finally get a close game out of this. And I think, though, in the NBA Finals this year, it's going to be Celtics-Warriors. Nick, quickly, who do you think?
I think it's going to be the Heat. I'm going to go the other way. I really like how Jimmy Butler played last night. I think that's a big, big thing. So, I mean, he's a good leader, and he's someone I would look to make a big difference in Game 7.
Jimmy Butler's going to play a big role for that Heat. They're going to need a lot of offensive power from him. Boston Celtics are favored by 2.5. I think that they'll be able to cover that. I think they win by about 3 or more. Let's make it fun. Give me Jason Tatum on the over. I think that he's going to have a big game as well. Jimmy Butler on the over. I think that he's going to have a good game as well. I think Boston covers the spread. I think that they also will obviously win on the money line. Real quick today, we forgot for baseball. Kentucky baseball beats Vanderbilt yesterday. Everybody, if you know me, you know I'm a huge Kentucky fan. They are going to face LSU. So essentially it'll be me versus Caroline Fenton because she went to LSU. And then the winner of that will play the Tennessee Vols, who Tony Vitello and gang have just been home running out the park. They're absolutely incredible. I think that they are just going to win all the way until Omaha. We are signing off today. I hope that everybody has a great Memorial Day weekend. I will be back on the mic with Junie Riddle. Nick will be behind the glass on Monday from 9 to 12:30 for a nice little Memorial Day edition of Campbell and Knezovic. You're listening to 102.5 The Game, 106.3, and the Game Nashville app.